So for those who don't know, there's a great orator named Slavoj Zizek. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I've only recently followed more of his work closely. I've just seen some videos before. But I really like this thought that he talks about with the notion of psychoanalysis, where as I've been someone who has definitely been way over introspective in my behaviors. I started kind of like a meditation journey in 2020, late 2020, I think early 2021. It might have been late 2021. Where I was really focused. I was joining the Waking Up app and trying to explore meditation, and it was the time of COVID, so there was just a lot of introspection and time to myself that was going on. I'm also an only child. So the thing that I've come to learn over the years of working on myself and through different mediums, right, whether that be meditation, breath work, movement, somatic therapy, etc., what have you, the over analysis of behavior and that desire to find your true self is in itself a form of paralysis. I think there's this notion of like seeking too much knowledge, or the desire to know too much itself can be a sort of pathology. I forget the term that's used for it in more of like a Vedic sense. There's this idea that not looking for knowledge or not having a pursuit or curiosity for knowledge is in itself a poor trait, and then the same way that desiring too much knowledge, being like gluttonous for it in a sense, is also a poor trait. And so and that really resonates with me, because I think the idea of like finding your true self, right, is as illusory as the idea of understanding the nature of reality, because you are constantly shifting. In the active process of trying to find yourself, you end up changing yourself, because that's what happened to me, where I found that it became very hard to discern who I was at a certain point in time, because I'd spent so long deconstructing it that now I just had a lot of puzzle pieces all over the place, and I was using them one at a time rather than having this big picture that I had. So that's why I think the process of meditation, of introspection, does demand a certain degree of structure and does demand that you take it slowly, and it's a process. Because if you overreach, then that's where I think you can find yourself in this sort of limbic space where all of a sudden you don't know where you are. You're kind of on the shores of your own subconscious trying to figure out what the hell is going on here. And that can be very difficult. That's why I really think it's important. I understand the importance now. I worked my way through it naturally, of like why you might want to have a guru or a guide or a coach that's helping facilitate that for you, right? Because I think like when you're looking for yourself, it's very easy to get self-absorbed in a sense, but you don't know what that self is yet. So then you're just getting absorbed into your own body and mind. And at that point, I think it becomes harder to hold on to the idea that you are not your thoughts. You are the observer of your thoughts. So in that moment, in that psychoanalysis and self-introspection, you are introspecting. You're not actually trying to find yourself in the process of introspection. You are the introspector, and that's it. And like there's nothing beyond that. You're always trying to look for something else. So then you get caught in this like narcissistic loop of being the introspector who is trying to find your own self, and that becomes a very difficult process. I don't think it's easy to express yourself when you're caught in that loop. And that's the real purpose of life, is the ability to express yourself. When you're finding your true self, the best way you could do that is to actively express yourself and engage with the world around you, to make the inner world that you have be reflected in the outer world out there. And when you start looking deeper and deeper into that inner world, I think that's where we get into like the Nietzsche quote, right? Where if you look into the abyss long enough, I'm butchering it right now, the abyss will look back at you. And then I think of that other Batman quote where it's like, I looked into the abyss, but the abyss blinked. And it's like that. I think that's the purpose, right? It's like you are looking down there, but then the abyss is its own thing. You don't need to be that abyss. The same way I don't think our purpose is to look maybe up at source and then be the same thing as being source. No, you are you. You can appreciate spirituality and introspection and psychoanalysis to look at the abyss and look at the source. But at the same time, you're the thing in between. You are the relationship between that abyss and that void. And you're never going to find yourself in one of the other two. You have to constantly express yourself to help create a relationship with the both. And that's the real act of finding your true self, right? You're always going to be living it rather than finding it. And this is where I think it comes back to the idea of the process, or the journey is the destination, right? The act of journeying, the process itself, is the destination. And that's why I really appreciate, Zizek's views on like process ontology and psychoanalysis here, because it is very much this new like trend to try to understand who you are, and I definitely succumb to it myself. But it's just a series of thoughts that I guess I have, having gone through that journey and now agreeing with where I myself had like stumbled through the process of finding myself, only to realize I kind of knew it all along. It's an intuitive life. I was trying to, you might see it in my title here, like practice intuition began really because I was thinking, oh, I lived an intuitive life for this long. Why can't I like do it anymore? I felt like I like lost certain skills, which I think happens when you kind of go through like that unmasking, deconstructing process for yourself. So when you're doing that, it's like that skill of regression they talk about, right? When you're going through unmasking or demasking. I don't know what the official term would be called. And so when you're going through this, it becomes really difficult to how to just live intuitively again, right? It feels like it takes practice one more time. So to me, I was thinking like I want to practice intuition, teaching myself, trusting myself, because if I can learn how to do that, then at some point I can eventually just do it again, right? But then I think you spend so long in that practice, that psychoanalysis, that introspection, that at a certain point you just have to admit, like I need to just be living intuitively. I just need to trust myself and just go with my gut and just act on it instead of trying to second guess what my gut is thinking. And eventually I think people stumble upon that process themselves. It can be very difficult to do so if you've already stumbled down the alley of getting too introspective. And yeah, that's it.